We start chapter 244 of Jujutsu Kaisen, the decisive battle in the uninhibited, demon-infested Shinjuku part 16, back where part 15 left off. A four-armed Sukuna is in the middle of the rubble. There is no sign of the disintegrated Hajime Kashimo. Yuji and his lawyer friend, Hiromi Higuruma, are jumping down to face the King of Curses. Yuji's glaring at the ancient sorcerer, still furious at everything he's done. Sukuna's grinning, completely unbothered by this. Higuruma's the least emotional of the three, just getting ready by adjusting his tie. But before the battle starts, we cut back to the sorcerer's meeting. Kusakabe is outlining their backup plan if Gojo loses, which he did. He's already explained the Takaba Yuta combo that they're hoping will take down Kenjaku. But this will require Yuta to head off and back quickly since they'll need him to fight Sukuna. Yuta's already managed to chop off Kenjaku's head, but it's clear that the brain monster isn't totally out of options just yet. They still need to figure out who is going to join in on the big fight against Sukuna. Hajime doesn't get why there needs to be any thought about this. It's an all-out battle. They're all going to try and take Sukuna down, provided he gets to try first. But Kusakabe doesn't think that makes sense. They've got some useless sorcerers who couldn't make an opening and would probably just get killed immediately. Like Miwa, who is standing right here next to him. She doesn't have the necessary power, plus she made a binding vow to never swing a sword again during Shibuya. And that attack of hers didn't even do anything, as an embarrassed Miwa points out. Kusakabe's words are interesting here. Not about what Miwa did, that's mostly accurate. She put all she had into that attack, but this should not be a binding vow. A vow to yourself is not supposed to have negative consequences like this. Kenjaku brought that up when warning Mahito about breaking their vow with Mekamaru. It's vows between different people that can hurt you. Vows to yourself are more about setting up more power. Take Nanami's overtime, for example. He uses 80% of his curse energy during his work hours in order to get 120% of his curse energy when he goes past that time slot. Nanami could use more curse energy during his work hours. The only consequence is that the 120% boost would be gone. But that's not what Miwa did in Shinjuku. She just tried really hard to hit Kenjaku. She should be fine. But Kusakabe is known for being a bit of a coward. He's trying to keep her out of the fight, and Kusakabe is giving a similar offer to the other remaining sorcerers. He's pretty sure that thanks to curse energy, they won't be merged into the giant monster. Even if Kenjaku and Sukuna win, they'll probably be able to survive for a little while. Like a few days at most. And Noritoshi Kamo puts his hand up. He's going to stay out of this one. He doesn't think he can help to begin with. Plus, he's planning to try and take his family out of the country, hoping he can find a way to take care of them even if the world ends. Kusakabe is fine with that. He makes it clear that they don't need to hear everyone's explanations. They just need to confirm which people are able to fight. Yuji tries to make this easier on Noritoshi, thanking the older student for teaching him a lot. But he takes it a bit too far, saying that Choso was bad at teaching. Yuji's big brother was shocked. Even Noritoshi doesn't know what to make of that. Kusakabe draws the line. They need fighters with reverse curse technique to even have a shot here, along with fighters who either want to die or don't care. Everyone else is either heading home or just here for support. The first one to raise his hand is Higuruma. He wants to fight Sukuna after Kashimo's done. Yuji turns to look at him, curious. Higuruma explains that he can take Sukuna's curse technique away. That's going to make this fight way easier. Someone else talking about his battle tactics shocked Kashimo. They're assuming he's going to lose. He can't have that. Hikari puts a hand to his new friend's shoulder, trying to calm him down. Higuruma doesn't react to the angry old guy. He just gets back to explaining his technique. If he can trigger the death penalty, he'll have access to the Executioner's sword. Kusakabe likes that idea. A blade that can kill with one shot is pretty useful. But there is a weak spot. Higuruma's technique needs the verdict to work. As Yuji explains, it's all down to what crimes the judge brings up once Higuruma opens his domain. That's something the sorcerer can't really choose. Yuji points out the 3 times Sukuna was able to get free. The first time was at his high school, when Gojo asked him to switch. The second time was in the juvenile detention center. And the third time was in Shibuya. A bunch of people died at both Shibuya and the juvenile detention center. And that's before he started doing what he wanted in Megami's body. Yuji's pretty optimistic that any crime Sukuna committed would be serious enough for the death penalty. But Higuruma is skeptical. He breaks it all down legally. At the high school, Sukuna harmed Itadori and tried to kill Gojo. And at the juvenile detention center, he killed Itadori, though that kind of doesn't work since Itadori came back to life after that. And he tried to kill Megami. Shibuya is the best case scenario. Sukuna killed Geto's adopted daughters. He harmed a bunch of civilians at once, so he attempted mass murder. He completely murdered that guy with the ponytail. and a ton of property damage. And again, Megumi's body was also taken over. That could be charged as bodily harm, attempted murder, or stealing a corpse, depending on how you look at it. Yuji agrees that the juvenile detention center was way worse than that. The whole building was wiped out, but Higuruma does not accept that. All that happened there was because of a spirit that ate Sukuna's finger. They can't charge Sukuna for those deaths. The same is true for Junpei's mom. She just found a cursed finger, which drew the curses to her. There is nothing they can really do about these deaths if Sukuna wasn't acting to help. It gets worse if you look at the sentencing rates. Japan will usually give imprisonment with hard labor for 1 death. 2 murders leads to life in prison or the death penalty, depending on the circumstances. You would need to kill 3 or more people to get the best shot at the death penalty. Sukuna is cruel, harming people freely for his own benefit. There is 0 chance of rehabilitation. Under Japan's Nagayama standard, that should lead to execution. Miwa is kind of bewildered by the legal talk, and she's amazed that Kusakabe seems to understand it. She loudly asks him if he actually understands what Higuruma just said or is just faking it. Even after a day like this, Kusakabe does not take that well. He continues Higuruma's explanation. If this were a normal trial, Sukuna would be executed for sure. But Higuruma's technique only picks 1 charge to go with. Going off what they've already listed, less than 30% of Sukuna's crimes could get him the death penalty. What's worse, each of Sukuna's major crimes includes minor ones. Stabbing someone would be attempted murder. But you may have also damaged their cool hoodie, so Judge Man might try you for property damage. That way, even if they charge Sukuna for the Shibuya massacre, Judge Man may just look at him wrecking the building. No death penalty for that. Yuji's starting to see the problem. Judge Man charged him with playing pachinko as a minor. The technique will absolutely work for petty crimes. And since the 2 were linked, Sukuna could also be charged with things Yuji did that were technically illegal. Anything while they're sharing a body should be possible. Higuruma's even more worried about the crimes from Sukuna's first life, back during the Heian era, 1,000 years ago. That one surprises Miwa. Even she's heard of the statute of limitations. Ancient crimes shouldn't be valid, right? Higuruma notes that, yeah, Japan's modern laws of the Meiji era included the principle of a statute of limitations, so those crimes should be invalid. But the criminal procedure law was amended in 2010 to remove the statute for murder, so they should be okay for Judge Man. But it's still valid for murders committed prior to 1985, so they can't be tried. But the Heian era's law, the Oro Code, didn't include a statute of limitations. Yuji has had enough of this back and forth. He just asks Higuruma flat out if there is a statute or not, and unfortunately, that's the problem. Even Higuruma doesn't know. This whole thing only gets more confusing. If the offender is abroad, the progression of the statute of limitations is halted. That alone could mess with this. If Sukuna being dead is counted as being abroad, that time since the Heian era would be meaningless, and all those crimes would stay valid for prosecution. Judge Man is a part of Higuruma's curse technique. If he sees something as possible, so will Judge Man. So these crimes are probably valid. Kusakabe sums it all up. With 1,000-year-old crimes, Judge Man getting to pick whatever he wants and all the stuff Sukuna's done, their odds of an easy death penalty are low. Hikari's still happy with a lesser crime. Confiscating Sukuna's curse technique would be useful. Still, Higuruma's not sure how that'll work when fighting someone who has multiple curse techniques. It's a help, but this is still really unclear. But Yuji has something in mind. He's got a plan to make sure that no matter what, Sukuna gets sentenced to death. And we're back to the fight. Meimei is sending a flock of explosive crows down at Sukuna. The ancient sorcerer doesn't look remotely worried about them, just easily sidestepping the explosion. Meimei still kept 1 crow back though, using it to keep an eye on the battle. She has to admit that her power hasn't done much against these special grade sorcerers. Gojo, Kenjaku, and Sukuna haven't had to worry about her. Still, they keep dodging her crows. If one lands a blast, it might actually do some damage. Either way, it's a distraction. That should give Higuruma and Yuji enough time to get close. The rest is up to them. And they're already breaking ground. Higuruma's enhanced his gavel to massive size, bigger than him, and smashes down at Sukuna with it. Sukuna dodges, but now he's got Yuji charging through the debris. He's punching rocks out of the way, one after another, like they're nothing. Sukuna backs up, trying to create some space. But before he can flex Ikamutoke and blast Yuji with lightning, Higuruma's gavel switches to its hook form, holding Sukuna back. Even with 4 arms, Sukuna can't get the Kamutoke free in time to blast Yuji away. Instead, he blocks, using 3 arms to catch Itadori's 1. Still, something about this blow surprised Sukuna as his body shook. He looks at Yuji. still trying to work it out. Those new arms of his are having an effect. But before Yuji can land a second hit, Higuruma takes charge of the situation. It's time for a retrial. The deadly sentencing courthouse forms around the three, the debris giving way to the familiar setting. This was Yuji's plan, an appeal. They can retry the Shibuya massacre. Judge Man already charged Yuji with mass murder for that. If they can appeal that case, they can get Sukuna with a charge they know Judge Man will award the death penalty for. Higuruma has to think about that. Deadly sentencing has a random element, but if he applies for a retrial, adding Sukuna as a co-defendant to Yuji, he should be able to reopen the case. It doesn't benefit Higuruma. He just needs Yuji there to act as a target for deadly sentencing. Even if they can't get the Shibuya incident, it will narrow their options down to stuff Sukuna did in Yuji's body. That takes all the Heian era stuff off the table, and Judge Man accepts the retrial. The Shikigami reads out the same charge. Yuji Itadori, accused of mass murder in Shibuya, October 31st, 2018. Guillotine blades surround the three sorcerers, now arrayed in a triangle. Higuruma responds to Judge Man, clarifying that Yuji didn't kill anyone. His confession was false and driven by personal accountability. The lawyer turns, looking right at Sukuna. The King of Curses is grinning. He's ready for this. So how could Sukuna have any defense against the charge of mass murder in Shibuya? Well, funny story. Article 36 of the Japanese Penal Code. Quote, an act a person was compelled to take to protect the rights of oneself or any other person against imminent and unlawful infringement is not punishable. And quote, an act exceeding the limits of self-defense may lead to the punishment being reduced or may exculpate the offender in light of the circumstances. Sukuna's mass murder in Shibuya was done to protect Megami. If what he did was what had to be done to protect himself and others from Mahoraga, the minimum use of force to protect himself, it is not punishable. Higuruma may still be able to argue this into the death penalty, but this is going to be a fight. That second clause could still reduce this to the confiscation of at least one curse technique. The Battle of Wits starts here. In the comments, let us know what you guys expect to happen next. As always, I'm /Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.